So in coming here, wanted to expose you to some of our products. These are our cultured products. We brought milk here and chocolate milk too. We also brought a whole bunch of the rich sour cream, the creme fraiche. Have y'all had a taste of that yet? The one that's, how many of you recognize the sour cream? Yeah, creme fraiche. So that's almost like butter, real buttery stuff. So for those of you who haven't had our cultured products, what do you think? These are a little bit unique in their flavors. Pardon? Yeah. Well,
I couldn't eat it for breakfast because I'd sit there and just eat it all.
Well, and you notice there's, there was a whole range of different things there. The 6% plain. How many of you enjoyed that plain yogurt, that good, rich, plain yogurt? We just passed around an article about saturated fats and the fact that really in America we've gone crazy vilifying, demonizing saturated fats, but it's probably the wrong thing. And so I strongly believe that the most nutritious fat you can put in your body is the fat of cows on grass. How many of you know anything about conjugated linoleic acid? CLA, is that something? Okay, good. What do you know? Heard of it? Or?
Yeah, heard of it.
You bet. You bet. So CLA, and you all should know about CLA because it's an example of one of those things that we just recently figured out. You got to understand that when I went to college, we hadn't even figured out that there was a difference between omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, and that omega-3s were essential fatty acids that we had to consume. That wasn't even knowledge in the nutrition community when I was in college in the 70s. So I think it's important to recognize that our knowledge of fat in particular is really recent and probably not too deep. We're just starting to understand. But we went through this thing in America in the 1970s where all of a sudden we decided we didn't want to have any saturated fats. That was causing heart disease. It was making us all sick. And now 30 years later, we're sicker than we've ever been. And so the recognition is that heart disease is probably more linked to carbohydrates and sugars than it is to fat. And that saturated fats actually are terribly important in our diet. Americans have gotten to the point that we eat 30 times the vegetable oil that we ate 30 years ago. That's a shocking number. Americans eat 30 times the vegetable oil that we did 30 years ago. And why? Because we believe that vegetable oil isn't saturated fat, so it isn't bad for you. Well, hello. I want to tell you that I believe that food is all to be eaten for effect, which means for health and vitality. And you only have so many calories to put in your body, you better put in good stuff. And every culture in the history of this planet ate all the fat they could get their hands on, all the animal fat. I like to tell the story that I could trace my ancestors back to landing in Plymouth in 1630, John Taylor. And every male head of household through to my father lived to be over 80 years old, since 1630. And I can assure you that none of them were drinking skim milk, and they were all eating all of the pork lard that they could possibly get their hands on. I think the idea that human beings were waiting for who is it, Cargill or whatever it is, to rename rapeseed oil as canola oil and hydrogenate it before we can be healthy as human beings is a ridiculous idea. So the saturated fats carry tremendous amounts of nutrition. One of probably the greatest human nutritional deficiency in America, or at least in the top 3, is vitamin D, which acts like a hormone, is necessary for every cell function, and you get it with saturated fats. You get it with animal fats. And so, and it helps if the animals that you're getting those fats from produce vitamin D by being out in the sun the way you and I do and having it act on their skin, rather than having it put in as a vitamin into their feed when they're standing in a barn on concrete. Conjugated linoleic acid, CLA, is the most potent immune-boosting nutritive substance known to man. It's a powerful anti-inflammatory, and European studies show that women that have the highest levels of CLA have half the breast cancer rate, less than half the breast cancer rate, even a third the breast cancer rate of women that have low levels. The only source of CLA, the only naturally occurring source, is the fat of ruminant animals eating green grass. Milk, dairy products have been associated with vitality, longevity, fertility, virility, ever since the dawn of time. When man first began building some kind of enclosures to worship in, the oldest structures we're aware of were worship places. And what did they bring there? They brought butter and cheese. Butter and cheese have been revered and respected and have been used as an offering to the gods as far back in humankind as we are able to go, since we came out of the trees. As soon as we started living in communities, if we lived in places where there were lactating animals, we learned to milk them. And where those people milked them, they kicked ass. They were bigger, stronger, sexier. They lived longer, they were smarter. And they went out and they prospered. The history of dairy products is the history of very successful cultures. You got to remember that more people, you go back 100 years to before industrial diets started changing the way human beings ate on this planet so much, or say 300 years before the Industrial Revolution, more people consumed dairy products than ate rice. More people consumed dairy products than ate wheat. Milk is the most ubiquitous, it is the most common single food type on the planet. So I was brought up to revere and respect milk, and I never bought any of the stories about it being bad for you. And one of the things that when I was in college, I remember being in our culture products class, and I got a dairy technology degree, and the professor is talking about different culture products all around the world, and he says, and then there's Kefir, which is alcoholic and effervescent. And everybody in the class goes, ooh. Now, I don't understand this. We were all in college, and we were drinking beer at lunch, and sometimes at breakfast. And here we were, going ooh over the idea of something being alcoholic and effervescent, but somehow it just didn't fit with milk. One of the things that I only late in the game today asked to be emailed out to you was a link to a Michael Pollan article, which is some of my best friends are germs, something like that, or some of my best friends are germs. So just look it up. It's a long article about your intestinal health. So there's 10 foreign organisms in your gut for every cell in your body. How many of you knew that? 10. 10. Who are you? Are you the 90% of organisms that are inside your GI tract? Are you the 10% that's around it, holding it? Which are you? Well, the fact is, you're very much whatever those 90% are inside. So about 120 years ago, some guy went off, and he went off to the Ural Mountains, and he found these people that were 100, 120 years old. And if you want to see some of them, you can go on a recent National Geographic, a couple issues ago, look it up. There are these people that are in, I've forgotten what nation, but it was one of those kind of enclosed by mountains, part of the Soviet Union, and it talks about how they have the incredible diverse grasses, hundreds of different kinds of grass in 1 cubic meter, or 1 square meter, and how their fields, they do everything they can to promote the diversity of all these wild grasses in the fields. And what are they living on? They're living on dairy products. And you can see those people in there, and some of them don't have teeth in their mouth, but they still got a glitter in their eye that tells me they're still active, which isn't something you guys think about very much, but you know, I'm 62 years old. I'm talking about vitality. I'm talking about life. These are 60, 80, 90, 100-year-old people that are out working in the fields, that are still doing agricultural labor, who are smiling, vital, happy people. This is real food. This is what Snowville Creamery is intent on making. Now the yogurt, that people came back and said, oh, they're drinking buttermilk and they're eating yogurt. Horse feathers. They were consuming kefir. This is the kefir culture that I got, that I've been carrying since 1978. I got it from Holland. When I wanted to find kefir in 1976 and went looking for it, I bought all kinds of kefir in America from different culture companies. I chased it, I was sent different things. It took me 2 years to find real kefir. This is kefir. And so we're gonna give you a chance to taste it. And if you want to, you can even take some culture home and keep it at home like a pet. Because this stuff is so alive. Yeah. Yeah, don't eat the chunky stuff. Because you're trying to eat yogurt or a probiotic or kefir or something because it's healthy and good for you. But I can tell you that the date on most yogurt is 8 weeks. And you look at the date and maybe it's got a month left, that means it's a month old. This I put in fresh milk this morning, and it is so alive. We're probably 300 years away from understanding the benefits to human nutrition of this. I should have brought a Lego or a picture. Can I press you? If you could, if a couple of you are on the outside here, just go ahead and work it. Pass these around so you guys can taste this. But this is the real thing. And this is something that you can have, you can keep yourself, and all you have to do is put milk on it. So instead of paying $6 for a carton of Snowville Creamery yogurt, you can just buy our milk for $3.50 and pour it on the grains and make your own yogurt. But it's fresher, it's full of life. And so when do you want to have your probiotic? You want to get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, some tea, do a little Tai Chi or Kung Fu or yoga, go for a walk, get a little exercise, and get empty. You want to make a probiotic work? Get empty. And then drink a bunch of that. Now, when you drink this, you're going to smell it a little bit too, because you'll smell it smells like fresh baked bread. It's really glorious, unique stuff. And I've had old Russian women just start to cry when they smell it and taste it. They say, you know, I had a 70-year-old woman say it's been 30 years since I left Russia. And she just bawled like a kid. This is the real thing, and I've given it to Russian people in the last few years in America who just come over, and they say, oh, yeah, my grandmother keeps kefir like this at home, but this isn't what they call kefir anymore in Moscow. So this is the stuff. And what I do is I mix it with bananas, strawberries, and blueberries, because you guys are better nutritionists than me. You can tell me all the wonderful things. You know, your body needs some C in the morning. This is what I live on. I'm 62 years old. I can kick anybody's ass in this room. And I'll probably be able to 20 years from now. And I believe that one of the reasons is that I've been consuming this stuff since I was in my 20s. I believe this is an incredible, profoundly helpful thing. And this is something too, these grains, this stuff that is kefir, you can't make it in the most sophisticated dairy laboratory in the world. They can't make kefir. You have to get it from somewhere. That's pretty cool stuff for nature. But the other part of it is, it wouldn't exist without human beings. Kefir doesn't exist in the wild. Kefir doesn't exist without human beings. But human beings can't make it. Oh, good. I like this. Because we better remember that nature's wilder and crazier and more unpredictable and more unexpected than anything that we could ever dream up in our wildest imagination. You want to help people get healthy? You want to be nutritionists? Get ready to get wild. You're living in a nation where for 30 years they propagated the most idiotic, stupid, foolish, ridiculous idea. Saturated fats are bad for you. It's ridiculous. If you want to look up some information, you go look up, write this down, the Weston Price Foundation. Weston Price was a dentist in Cleveland in the 1930s, and he figured out that eating industrial food made people's jaws shrink up so they had to pull teeth, made people have smaller breathing passages and nasal passages, and he went around the world and took tens of thousands of photographs of indigenous people all over the world who were still eating what he defined as nutritionally dense diets, which meant organ meats, all the animal fats you could get your hands on, basically, lots of protein. And this is what people eat across the world. And when they do, it changes the physical structure that you see very much in the jaw, cheekbones, all these kinds of things. And they did studies on dogs and cats, and they found that it took 3 years to completely degenerate. They didn't even understand DNA, but they talked about that 3 generations of poor nutrition made it impossible for that species to produce good offspring until there'd been 3 generations of good nutrition reintroduced to it. You're living in the world of 3 generations of bad nutrition in America. I've traveled all over the world. I've been doing Chinese martial arts for 30-some years, 40. I grew up in a family where there were a lot of kids, there were a lot of rough and tumble. The girls all did ballet, and I was a wormy, skinny little kid, but I loved to run, so I was pretty hyperactive and not really athletic, but I sure enjoyed moving and shaking. And I can tell you that human vitality, you can see it in the physique of people, and the physique of people come from the nutrition. And I'll tell you again, whatever's been going on in this country for the last 30 years will be viewed 30 years from now as being a dark descent into foolishness. So that's a quick introduction to my view of the world, and now I'd be happy. We're still only we got half an hour. Now I'd like to go ahead and answer some of the specific questions that were asked, and entertain any discussion from you. I've tried to come here and put it right down, challenge you, needle you, and get controversial. I don't think until you start playing rough and tumble, until you start a little bit of give and take, do you communicate, do you learn anything? So let's communicate, let's go at it. Go ahead.
First of all, you're my favorite speaker we've seen so far.
Thank
Second of all, I'm really interested in the kefir, like that you were talking about. How can you explain like the storage that you have and like how you exactly that process?
You bet. It's really easy because if Genghis Khan could keep this thing going in a horse bladder saddlebag, you won't have any trouble. So, I know all about sterile technique and bugs and all that stuff. That's my training. But I still handle this with my fingers. And nothing's going to grow in here. There's so much stuff growing in there. You can't give it enough competition for the bad stuff to take over. All you got to do is put this in milk. Now, cultured dairy products. All dairy cultures grow at 1 of 2 temperatures. 1 of 2 temperatures. Okay, think about it. It'll be obvious when I say it. Room temperature, right? And body temperature. So body temperature cultures are yogurt. Room temperature cultures are sour cream and buttermilk and kefir. So kefir is something that grows at room temperature. It grows in about 24 hours, so it follows your life cycle, follows a milking cycle. So you put those bugs in the milk 24 hours later, you strain these grains out, put in some fresh milk, and then you drink the cultured product. It's like I just, passed out to you. just to keep the, basically the fruit flies.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that.
Okay.
And you have to keep it breathing because it's producing carbon dioxide and it's alive. You put that in a sealed jar for too long and it'll kill itself. But one of the problems with kefir, and it's you either do it at home or you don't get it. You know, I mean, I'm thinking about trying to work with Fluff Bakery and start making kefir smoothies there, so y'all can walk in and get, you know, that fresh, that good, this same stuff, and maybe we'll get that going here. But that's the only way you can really get the benefits is to have it. So people always say, "Oh, what do I do when I don't want to eat it?" And I say, "I feel like a priest who just taught you how to pray." So this, if you really want the health benefits of kefir, you just make it part of your life. And I was a road warrior. I traveled a lot, but I always was married. So there was always somebody at home to keep my kefir, you know. But yeah, it isn't that tough. You know, somebody said, "Oh, I don't have time to do that." And I thought, you gotta be kidding me. You see how long it took me to do that? I throw it in a blender with a banana, some strawberries and blueberries, put it in a half-gallon jar, and most days I don't eat lunch until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And that's good food. I mean, you can tell I'm a busy guy. I'm kind of with it, you know. If I wasn't putting good juice in, I don't think I'd still be at it. You know? I've consumed more of that stuff. I've lived more on dairy products than anybody you'll ever meet in your life until you go to some Lapland or something, you know.
If it was legal to sell raw milk, would you pasteurize your dairy products at all?
Oh, that's it. Thank you. If we could sell raw milk, we would. But we would still pasteurize our dairy products because for most people, that's their access to them. That's what they want.
Right.
But if we could bottle raw milk, you bet we would. And a good friend of mine is Mark McAfee. You can look him up online. His company is Organic Pastures. He bottles about the same 20,000 gallons a week of raw milk that we bottle in pasteurized milk. But I have to tell you too, another very good friend of mine is Dr. John Sheehan, who's the head of FDA for dairy and eggs. And John's famously quoted as saying, drinking raw milk is like playing Russian roulette with your health. I think they're both right. So John's absolutely right. Raw milk can kill you. And it's especially dangerous for infants, immune compromised, and you can do everything you want to do on a dairy farm, and it still doesn't mean that there isn't an organism in there that could make somebody really sick or even kill them. It's just the nature. You're around, you know, you have to appreciate the anatomy of a cow in relation to the milking process. I mean, come on. You know, this brings up one of my favorite stories, which I think I can tell in an adult company, about the 3 engineers. You see, I'm an engineer too, so I'll tell an engineer joke. 3 engineers are arguing about the nature of God. And so the mechanical engineer says, look, God's obviously a mechanical engineer because the bodies, you know, animals, people, they work by these levers, you know. Human beings are very mechanical. Animals are very mechanical. The electrical engineer says, oh, no. All those muscles and everything, they're driven by electrical impulses from the brain. These are electrical signals that make all these work. And God's an electrical engineer. And the third said, no. First of all, God's a woman, so it's she, but she's a civil engineer. And only a civil engineer would plant a toxic waste outflow and locate it in the middle of a recreation area. So the point is that our ideas about microorganisms and health are really weird. Because when a calf is born, it has no immune system. It has no functioning immune system. It depends on its mother's colostrum and the milk it's getting. The colostrum helps gives it antibodies and helps challenge and begin to develop an immune system. But when a calf puts its mouth on its mother's nipple, it has cow poop on it. It's inoculating itself with the intestinal organisms of its mother. And so raw milk, obviously, is closer to the milk that mothers have been feeding their children of all species, closer to breast milk. It's different and it's positive. And the idea that having something, that not consuming things that have foreign organisms in them or other organisms in them, we shouldn't be doing that, is also wrong. I mean, everybody's aware now that women who have C-section, their children have more immune diseases and generally poor health related to their immune system not being developed by the travel, you know, through the vaginal canal and all of the organisms that are there. And that some people even make a practice now with a C-section of immediately inoculating the baby as best they can from that area of the body. We're supposed to be, so the raw milk things that gets into almost into a schism of two ways of looking at human health and the natural world. And so it's a very contentious thing. But I believe Mark McAfee is right, and I believe Dr. Sheehan is right. They're both right. These are the toughest things to tease out in life, are the things that are complicated like that. Yes?
Warren, I have tons of questions for you, but I've been vegan for 2 years actually, because I don't handle milk all that well. And you comment on, I've always wondered, you know, a very large percentage, actually the majority of the world is lactose intolerant, they claim. And do you think that's just because there's a lack of milk exposure to a lot of populations, or that for some reason the enzymes genetically don't develop? Or
I think the first thing to understand is that over the last few thousand years, when the vast majority of people on the planet were consuming dairy products, they weren't consuming fresh milk. They were consuming sour milk. And in sour milk, the lactose has been turned to lactic acid. So, you know, lactose is a complex sugar. It's glucose and galactose. And when and so your body has to either be able to digest it, or the organisms in your intestine digest it further down in your GI tract, where it gives you distress. I think first of all, half of the people who believe they're lactose intolerant are not. That's the first fact to understand. That's a fact. And there's a lot of gastrointestinal distress involved in American milk. There are lots of people who write us all the time. They tell us either their children or themselves as adults, they couldn't drink milk, sometimes for 20 or 30 years. They drink our milk just fine. They can't believe it. And these are people from all over the world. We've heard this story hundreds and hundreds of times. So milk is not milk. There's different kinds of milk. I can tell you that in the international market for dairy commodities, American dry milk powder is known internationally to cause flatulence to the extent that they put the equivalent of Beano in it. And no, I'm not joking. I mean, but the American dairy industry that's taught us how to make twice as much milk from cows by stuffing them with corn and soybeans absolutely swears that there's no difference between that milk and the milk we make. Hello. The head guy for the dairy lobby, the head mouthpiece for the dairy producer lobby for the dairy farmers in Washington, D.C. says, Warren's a very clever marketeer. When you pay twice as much for your milk, you expect it to taste better. It's the placebo effect. I was very tempted to send him 2 6-packs of beer. The Sierra Nevada Pale Ale that I keep in my own refrigerator, and a 6-pack of Buckhorn Light. And send it to him and say, you know, when I heard you say that, I went home and realized that I took home a 6-pack of Buckhorn Light, and I realized that all beer is the same too. And I just want to tell you, I really thank you, because I've been wasting all that money I've been spending on that expensive California Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, because it does taste just like Buckhorn Light, doesn't it? But the real science is with regard to conjugated linoleic acid, CLA. When the cows are on grass, they only make 5 times more CLA. Only 5 times. Just 5 times more CLA than cows on corn and soybeans. Just 5 times. And so all you American women who are drinking skim milk, I wanted to have you guess how much whole milk of our Snowville Creamery milk you would have to drink every day to put you in the highest level of CLA in your body that gave you 1/3 the breast cancer rate for women that had the low amount. I want you to guess how many glasses a day of our milk would it take to get that much, of our full fat milk. Just think of the number yourself. I'm about to tell you. It would take 8 ounces. It would take 1 cup. And you drink skim milk, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding. You know what else CLA does? It helps give you lean body mass. It helps you metabolize fat. I'll eat one of those 6% 24-ounce plain yogurts for lunch. If I can't get lunch and I'm driving a milk truck to Cleveland in a big hurry, I'll drink a half gallon of whole milk for lunch. I go through a half a gallon, a half and half every other day in my coffee. You can see it's a real problem for me. My dad could eat a half gallon of ice cream with a spoon. Didn't bother me. Pretty good ice cream. He taught me how to make good ice cream. How many of you know Jenny's ice cream? Oh, yeah. Well, those who didn't raise your hand, you know, get looking. You remember that thing in Louise and Thelma, where she comes back after Brad Pitt jumps her, and she says to Susan Sarandon, "Oh, now I see what all the fuss is about." Get Jenny's. If you haven't had Jenny's, take a bite. You'll see what all the fuss is about. But food should make you smile. Food should make you feel good. And you should never be eating food that doesn't make you feel so good and satisfied and full before you're even full, you know. Eat good, rich food. You'll get all you want. That cream top, those dessert flavors, lemon, ginger, coffee, cardamom, that's 8% butterfat. It's 8% fat. That's medicine. How many of you heard about seriously, where you're supposed to get grass-fed butter and put it in black coffee? Yeah. And they had they call it executive power, Superman, what was it? It was
I don't know, I can't remember.
But you've heard about this.
Yeah, one of my customers was talking about it.
Yeah, because they're talking about how much nutrition there is in grass-fed dairy fat. And I think to myself, holy shit, why would I melt butter into coffee when I can just put whipping cream in instead? What a ridiculous thing. But it's like they have some kind of idea that that's unhelpful or you know, bad for us or going to make us fat or something. Enjoy your dairy products. That creme fraiche is 36% fat. If you're worried about fat, it's half the fat of butter. You use that with that rich, strong, buttery flavor, you can use it as a direct replacement for butter. You know, I use vegetable oils in my house, but I'm pretty selective about which ones I use. But I use a lot of butter. That stuff fries real well. Use it instead of mayonnaise. Put a plop of it in any soup, any noodles, chocolate cake, on top of Jenny's ice cream, anything. You know, there's real nutrition in that stuff. So get back to your question about this thing about people consuming milk. I think it's you got to be very real careful. You know, I recently became a member of an agriculture council in the state of Ohio for the Humane Society of the United States, which is, there's two humane societies. Humane Society of the United States is the one that, especially over the last decade, has become very much, they say they're 1/3 vegan and 1/3 vegetarian, and I say, and they're 1/3 healthy eaters. But I think a lot of people make the arguments they do against milk because they're basically, they're also vegetarians too. They don't believe in eating flesh. And I don't have any problem with not eating flesh. I was a vegetarian hippie. What got me eating, I wasn't really a hippie. I was a vegetarian. But you know, anyway, I didn't more than Hunter Thompson, you know, myself. But when I started doing Kung Fu and Tai Chi in San Francisco, the Chinese teachers didn't understand students that wouldn't eat meat. And when you went to have lunch, you took your master to lunch, your teacher to lunch, they would order for you. And I had one of my kidneys pretty well destroyed because I was riding a bicycle, I got hit by a car when I was about 20. And there I am, 25 in San Francisco, and my Tai Chi my Tai Chi master takes me to lunch, and he orders kidneys for me. How did he know? Well, he knew. He was a Chinese doctor too. And so, you know, I learned to eat tendons and, you know, all kinds of stuff because this is what my Tai Chi and Kung Fu teachers knew from centuries of Chinese health, what you had to put in yourself. And one of the best reasons to be using soy products if you're clustered into a chaste monastery is because it does lower the libido, you know. So the Chinese can be very practical. Well, if that's the way you want to be, this is how to do it. You know? So, and I think too, I'm sorry, but most of you are women, and so I hope nobody's offended by what I'm about to say, but I just remember in the late 70s and early 1980s when it was the catechism of feminist, PhD level feminism courses in America that frankly, if you gave the girls trucks and you gave the boys dolls, they'd all really come out the same. We're really all the same. And I never really got in arguments about it because I could tell when I was in the situations where people were ardently expressing this to me, most of them were seniors in college and getting it from their PhDs in college. I just kept my mouth shut, but I felt like saying, obviously you've never been in a farm, a barnyard. You can tell a bull or a cow from 100 yards away. You walk in, you can tell the roosters from the chickens. And if you're into cats, there are always cats in my house, you can tell a boy from a girl cat. You don't have to look, you can tell. And the idea that men and women are the same. But this was something that somebody wanted to believe intellectually. They believed it was the moral, right, intellectual thing. And they decided to put that on nature. It's all right, nature. If you don't culturate, we're really boys and girls are all the same. Well, nature didn't care. It wasn't true then. And I think in the same way, some argument that milk is unnatural because who drinks the milk of another species? It's, nobody asks, well, is it unnatural to eat meat? Most animals that can do. Nobody says it's unnatural to eat meat, but somehow they say it's unnatural to drink the milk of another species. I think they're just furthering a basic ethical moral argument, and really the people who further that, who ask that question, are really generally vegetarians.